Hey Merfolk fans, I'm Joe. Thanks very much for joining me today. If you'd like to support my channel, please check out the link above to my Patreon page. I'll also put the link down below in the description. I'm back with round 5 of a Modern League. Looks like the opponent is on the play for this round. I'm currently at 3-1 after winning the first 3 rounds and then losing in a devastating manner to Jund. Let's take a look at the opening hand. Hopefully no mulligans. This is a lovely hand, so I can keep this. And it looks like the opponent kept as well. Flooded Strand, hopefully blue-white control. Even though I have the 7 Cs in the deck, Thassa is quite good in long matchups. We just have to monitor our devotion really carefully because we don't want to make Thassa into a creature in most situations against a blue-white. The idea that Thassa could get pathed is enough to dissuade us from actually trying to attack with her as a 5/5. Now, if the opponent ever taps out for like a Jace, we can flash in a Trickster, turn Thassa into a creature, and then bash for 5. In many cases, just getting in that 1 hit for 5 makes it worthwhile to turn her into a creature if she then gets pathed. But blue-white opponents are almost always going to have some mana up. So I pass the turn. They get a tapped Hallowed Fountain. Tap Celestial Colonnade. The Seas will be decent on a Colonnade. Drew an Aether Vial. Now that is definitely a card that I could play here. It gets around Spell Snare, which they're representing with the blue mana, and Aether Vial just lets us comfortably play around counter spells like for the rest of the game. But without any Force of Negations in hand, I want to dig and try to get one of those. So I think going with Silvergill Adept is the play here. We can afford to wait for a little while on Thassa. We've got some gas to work with in hand, and the Scry isn't super necessary right now. So we don't necessarily need to run out Thassa on turn 3. We can just play an island, play Aether Vial, and then pass with mana up for Trickster. Opponent lets that resolve, so no Spell Snare. And Lord is quite nice, especially if we get this Aether Vial down. All right, opponent keeps playing lands and passing. Fine with me. And you can see playing that Silvergill Adept drew me into the Force of Negation 1 turn faster than it would otherwise have done. So let's just go straight to combat. Start chipping away at the opponent's life total. You know, it seems like they have a really high life total right now, but you'll see how quickly it goes down. Just 2 points at a time. The opponent feels safe until suddenly they're at like 7 life and they realize there's not much they can do. So as I mentioned, you're going to use that generic mana to get the Aether Vial onto the board. Opponent cracks a Flooded Strand. They're already down to 16. And let's see if they've got a play for turn 4. All right, tapping out for Jace. Not too scary. We can play a Force of Negation, pitch a Trickster, flash in a Trickster, and continue the beatdowns. Take a Vial up. That was quite a good draw, actually, because it gets to use Aether Vial on 1. So I'm just going to fire up the Mutavault. I could play a Lord here, and instead of cracking for 5, I could... sorry, 6, I can get in for 9. But I'd rather not overcommit to the board. This is just about what you want to keep in on the table against blue-white. Okay, swing for 6, and if they have nothing... at the end of the turn, I'm probably going to crack the Waterlogged Grove. I don't really want to adapt Ben just because all the cards in my hand are so good right now. Flooded Strand and Wrath of God. So opponent's starting to feel the heat already at 10 life, and that's sort of fine. We can Vial in Ben and crack the Waterlogged Grove. Drew into another island, unfortunately, but the Adapt can help us improve the quality of our hand. Aether Vial goes with 2. We drew a Mutavault. Sorry, we drew a Trickster, is what I meant to say. I was looking at that Mutavault, which is nice. We can activate the Mutavault. The opponent is representing Path, but it's not particularly scary if they path either of these creatures right now. Swing for 2 and 1. And I'm going to use this opportunity now to adapt Ben. If I draw something better than the Trickster, I'm not, devastated having to throw that away. And so I drew another Island Walk Lord, which is clearly better than Trickster in the matchup. So I get to swing for an extra point of damage. Opponent is down to 6, which is lethal if I vial in one of these lords. Lethal on board, I should say, with the 2 creatures here. All right, opponent plays a land, passes. Probably going to go for Cryptic Command. So I'm going to go ahead and vial in one of these creatures. Even though I've already got a good amount of power on the table right now, they are representing a block with Celestial Colonnade. So we can't really afford to get in without Island Walk right now. We can't really just let the opponent eat our creature. Although we are going to be able to tick AEther Vial up to 3 to get Thassa on the board and then make our creatures unblockable. But, you know, vialing in a Lord is going to just sort of force their hand a little bit. And then Thassa's Scrying is going to keep our top decks being you know, high value. So definitely going to go ahead, tick AEther Vial up, and then I'll go to combat right now, or try to, without activating Mutavault or anything. I'm fine with this being a 2-turn clock instead of a 1-turn clock. Let's see what the opponent chooses to do with Cryptic Command. They're going to tap my creatures and draw a card. Now that is fine, because I can still just activate Mutavault and try to crack in for 3. Now again, if the opponent has a path or something, totally fine with that. Note that I have 3 Devotion on the table right now, so if I vial in Thassa, she won't be alive. She won't be a creature, I should say, right away, which is exactly where we want to be, as I mentioned, against blue-white control. You want to keep her just as a value engine that scries every turn. Okay, another tapped Celestial Colonnade. It's time to vial in Thassa. She's going to start scrying. Going to be hard for the blue-white opponent to fight their way out of this. Now that Mutavault seemed pretty sweet because it's another way that we can respond to a Cryptic Command. So I chose to leave the Mutavault on top. Unfortunately, the AEther Vial on 3 has pretty much done its work at this point. And extra lands give me more activations for unblockable with Thassa. So I chose just to go straight to combat, attacking with the Benthic Biomancer and the Master of the Pearl Trident. Opponent goes for Snapcaster and then Cryptic Command. So this is not going to have the desired result. Opponent is almost certainly going to try to bounce the Lord. And with Vial on 3, I can't get it back in right away. But they clearly haven't read Thassa, all the way to the bottom at least. They didn't see this text that says target creature you control can't be blocked this turn. So see how this played out. Opponent tap, tap, tap. And here's Cryptic Command, returning my Lord and drawing a card. So game over at this point. Benthic Biomancer is a 2/2, even without the Lord on the table. So I activate Thassa, make Benthic Biomancer unblockable, and the opponent scooped. What they wanted to do in this position was to flashback Cryptic Command, tapping my team and bouncing the Mutavault. That would definitely let them live one more turn. Unfortunately, though, I would play out the Mutavault again and just come back at them again and again and again. Thassa making the creatures unblockable is usually too much for the opponent to be able to stop when they're at such a low life total. So a pretty easy game 1 against blue-white control. We didn't see any little Teferis. We didn't see any Narsets. We didn't see any big Teferis. So 1 Wrath of God is not going to be enough to stop Merfolk most of the time. Let's go ahead and see how game 2 went. Okay, back for game 2. Let's have a quick look at the sideboard. I did take out 6 of my 7 Seas effects, leaving in 1 Spreading Seas to potentially turn off a Celestial Colonnade. I brought in 2 of my 3 Dismembers. I took out 1 land because Path to Exile typically ramps us pretty well. Even though I'm playing 19 lands in the deck, going down to 18 lands with a curve that stops at 3 and AEther Vial to help us out, and Path to Exile to ramp us, we can definitely afford to trim a land, going down to 18 lands. So let's just do a quick count of how many cards came out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 7 cards out. I would have brought in the 2 Kiras, really excellent in this matchup. So 2 Kiras, I believe 3 Deprives, and didn't bring in any Echoing Truths. I brought in 1 Phyrexian Revoker, so some decent cards in the matchup. So quite a nice hand. So the reason I bring in 2 Dismembers against blue-white is they now almost always side into some kind of angels, whether it's like Baneslayer Angel or Restoration Angel. And even if they don't play any and they just start to beat us down with Celestial Colonnade, Dismember is a pretty useful card to have in small quantities in the matchup. And as you can see, they already have a Celestial Colonnade on the battlefield. And this opening hand happened to have my Singleton Spreading Seas that I left in after sideboarding. Force of Negation, probably the best draw in that spot. We didn't need it immediately because they never cast anything on turn 2 that we want to counter. The 3rd land, so we're continuing to draw exactly what we want to draw. Swing in with Benthic Biomancer. I'm going to wait for the time being on adapting since we've got Trickster up. And our hand is fine. Like, I don't really want to pitch any of these cards. Opponent plays a 3rd land. I'm going to try to flash in Trickster. Opponent says okay. We untap, and AEther Vial is quite nice, as you saw in the first game. Being able to deploy our creatures at instant speed is exactly where we want to be. Okay, swing for 3, try to get the opponent down to 15. We do so. And, I've got some choices here, but I'll just pass with Force of Negation up. If the opponent tries to go for Jace like they did last game, I won't have to pitch any of my valuable cards. I can just cast Force of Negation for full value. If they don't cast anything, I can, of course, just try to adapt Ben to get some value out of my mana and pitch whatever the worst card is. If I happen to loot into a land, I would probably pitch that. Okay, opponent's going to use a Path to Exile on a Trickster, already starting to fear for their life total. Not unreasonable, but it's kind of what we want them to be doing. Note, I could have used Force of Negation on that, but you typically don't want to use your valuable counterspells on spot removal since we have so many creatures and very few counterspells, relatively. Alright, so Jace is a good card, but Force of Negation will win every time. Okay, so Kira is a really, really good draw, but you typically want to wait really long to play Kira in this matchup. You want to make the opponent spend as many cards as possible. I'm going to go ahead and turn the Celestial Colonnade off right now. Drew a Waterlogged Grove, which is pretty nice. That's going to let me adapt if I want to, but let's see here. I can choose to wait. Opponent finds a Field of Ruin. They lead off with Opt. 3 cards in hand. I'm going to adapt now. When their life total is already sort of low, the value of having a 2-drop, sorry, not a 2-drop, a 2-power creature on the table is actually pretty great, all by itself. Another Lord, fortunately we have to pitch one of them. We only have 2 Dismembers, and we need that kind of protection. If they rip like a Baneslayer Angel, then we go from a winning position to immediately losing position. AEther Vial ticking up. Trickster is nice as Ghast. I'm going to go ahead and get in with my 2-power creature now that Benthic Biomancer has adapted. And we see the opponent going for something. So Restoration Angel, almost certainly in from the sideboard, and a very good target for Dismember. Now, obviously, I could flash in Trickster, but I just want to deal with this Restoration Angel permanently. So let's go ahead and just get rid of that. Opponent takes 2, going down to 11. Plays a land, passes the turn. I'm going to use the opportunity to cycle the Waterlogged Grove. And we can just keep poking in with Benthic Biomancer. If the opponent is sitting back on like a Supreme Verdict, they've only got 2 cards in hand. We can't really we can't really expect them to have it. So it might be time to get Kira on the board, and actually drawing Thassa is pretty sweet there. Taking AEther Vial up to 3 is going to be great value for us in this spot. It's another benefit of running all the Reejereys and the Thassas and the Kiras, is it makes Vial on 3 very useful. So I'm going to try to get in for 2 more. Opponent uses another Path to Exile on Benthic Biomancer, which we already adapted, so getting a lot of value out of all of our cards. So just pass here. Being very patient. Opponent finds another Field of Ruin. Okay, flash in Trickster, bring in the Lord. And with 1 card in hand, I felt like it was time to get Kira onto the table and try to get in for some damage. We've still got plenty of gas in hand if the opponent does happen to have a Wrath as the last card in hand. Opponent takes 3. I chose not to get in with the Lord just in case the opponent had like Snapcaster as an Ambush Viper. That's a little passive, but pretty standard. Alright, so the opponent does have the Verdict. It does sting a little bit, but we have 3 great cards. We're going to get to draw another on our turn. And with Thassa on the battlefield soon, we'll be able to just draw quality cards moving forward. Keep this AEther Vial on 3. And Mutavault. I'm going to go ahead and play that. Bounce the Oboro to my hand because I want to loot that away. Play Benthic Biomancer. Immediately adapt it. If they want to spend another Path to Exile, that's great. And drew a Silvergill. So Benthic Biomancer, amazing against blue-white control. We can pitch that unneeded Oboro. Beautiful synergy there with Benthic Biomancer. You saw how it contributed mana until we didn't need it anymore, and then we got to bounce it. So when people ask, why do you run Oboro? There's a few reasons, but one of the reasons is Benthic Biomancer has nice synergy with it. Some of you might have noticed the sequencing that I did there. You can also play Benthic Biomancer, activate Adapt, and then with the ability on the stack, you can even wait until it says, when the second ability triggers, when it says whenever 1 or more +1 counters are put on Benthic Biomancer, draw a card, then discard a card. You can wait to bounce Oboro, but I didn't really see a good reason to wait. If the opponent responded with Field of Ruin, I could just pay 1 more mana to activate Oboro again and bounce it back to my hand. So not a big deal one way or another. With the opponent at 8 life, seems fine running out Silvergill Adept right now. Opponent's going to respond with Snapcaster, some funky stuff, and then rather than Path to Exile, going with Opt. I guess they feel like they need to find like a really high impact spell, potentially another Wrath. Okay, drew another Silvergill Adept, a lot of gas in hand, and Thassa is just going to bring more. So this is shaping up to be really similar to the first game, where it ended with Thassa making my creatures unblockable. Opponent looks like they're going to Field of Ruin Mutavault. Totally fine, but I'm going to use that mana from Mutavault before it goes away. Get an island, and now with that extra colorless mana, I can, well, first of all, scry away Mutavault, and then make one of my creatures unblockable. So whenever an opponent casts, or activates Field of Ruin, you should try to think very carefully if you could use that mana. In this case, I was able to put it to good use. Okay, so we scried away Mutavault, drew a Lord. Things looking pretty bad for the opponent. I'm just gonna probably make Silvergill unblockable and just try to attack for 4. No reason to commit anything else to the board right now. We've got a 2-turn clock. Unblockable, they can't do anything about Thassa except I guess like Detention Sphere. But if they go for Detention Sphere on Thassa, we can Vial in a Lord, and they're just in an equally difficult situation. So Snapcaster getting frisky. Looks like Cryptic Command maybe. What do they got in the graveyard here? Not too much. They could just get a Path to Exile, I guess. Deprive, exactly what I want on top of the deck. Thank you, Thassa. Leave Vial on 3. We're gonna go ahead and get in with our 2 creatures. Don't have to make them unblockable yet because there's no creatures on the opponent's side of the battlefield that could possibly block them. Opponent tries to get Snapcaster Mage, but I say nay. And the opponent scooped there. So they actually sat and looked at Deprive for a little while. Don't think they were expecting me countering their creature. And yeah, you can see how good Thassa is, how good Kira is in these mid-range and control matchups. So it was a solid league for the 7 Seas version of Merfolk. The Seas have amazing synergy with Thassa. They're extremely strong against Tron matchups, Eldrazi Tron, Mono Green Tron. Extremely good in any of the mid-range matchups, from Jund to Rock to Mardu. They're not great in matchups like blue-white control here because, obviously they have a whole bunch of islands already. Not amazing against blue-red Phoenix and other blue-red decks. Pretty much, if the opponent has islands, you just take out your Seas. If they don't, then your Seas are doing great work. And we're always going to have Devotion, even without Seize, to turn Thassa into a creature when we want to do that. So, unfortunately, lost consecutive games against Jund with them drawing just insane gas, and missed out on the 5-0, but I'm totally happy with a 4-1. I think I'm going to keep running back this version of the deck. I really love being able to turn Thassa into a creature really easily with all of the Devotion on the table with the Spreading Seas effects. So please leave your thoughts down below. Let me know what you think about this build of Merfolk, how it's situated, how it lines up against the current metagame. Please subscribe to the channel if you enjoy my content, and please take a moment and check out my Patreon page if you'd like to support the channel and all of these videos that I make and upload for you guys. So, as always, thanks very, very much for tuning in, and I'll see you guys in the next video where I'll surely be back with some more gameplay. I'll see you there. Bye.